Good morning. So yesterday I went to go to the church to steam clean, and beforehand I had asked my husband, hey, can we take this speaker? My husband said, well, let's take this smaller speaker. It'll be easier to carry. And I was like, well, that speaker really doesn't work very well for me, and I need to be able to hear it over top the steam cleaner because I'd like to be able to, worship while I'm working. And he said, I've got it, baby. I know how to work it. And I said, okay. So we went to the church, and I've got 5 kids, 3 of which are small, so they like to be able to stand on the pew with me and Daddy so they can get right on our level and be able to worship. So as we started cleaning, the steam cleaner was right there, by my head because I've got the attachment. I'm just cleaning the pews on the side part of the church, and the speaker was working just fine initially, and I'm sitting there and I'm like in my own world worshiping and steam cleaning. All of a sudden the volume drops on the speaker, and I'm like, this is getting ready to be a thing. My husband goes over there and he adjusts it and he fixes it, and here I go and I move to the next pew. And I'm like, well, these really don't look that dirty. It's got a couple little stains up there, but it's okay. And then the volume drops out again, and I start getting aggravated. This is just full transparency. And I'm like, man, sometimes I wish that he would just listen to me, but he doesn't listen. Had he brought the bigger speaker, and while I'm sitting there and I'm complaining, I'm not praising anymore. And so it becomes something that I wanted to do to help the house of God became something that I was complaining about, not doing the work, but I was complaining because it wasn't going my way. And so as I'm sitting there, I get to my pew and I start looking at all the little shoe prints, and I'm sitting here and I'm scrubbing it, and I'm seeing all this dirt come up, dirt where there's not even shoe prints. I felt like God was speaking to my heart, and he began to say to me, Jessica, this is the problem with my churches, is that they're looking at everybody else and what everybody else is or isn't doing. And because they're looking at everybody else, their focus isn't on me anymore. And it began to really just hit my heart, and I felt my stomach kind of sink a little. And I was like, Lord, I don't want it to be like this. And so while I'm sitting here and I'm having this internal conversation with God, my husband goes outside and he finds this little speaker, and it's smaller than the one that he originally had brought. And he takes it with him to the gym, and he brought it in, he hooked my phone up to it, and he started playing the music, and the music just started blaring. And I mean, it seemed so much louder than what it usually does on that little speaker. And I'm like, okay, God, I hear you. So I continued going on, and I would have you know that every single pew that I cleaned, there was not as much dirt that came off of those pews as what came off of mine. And I don't have the only little kids in the church, and I don't have the only little kids that walk across the pews in the church. And so as I come home yesterday and even into the evening, and I'm sitting there and I'm praying and I'm reading in my Bible, and I feel like God is dealing with me on several different things. And the first thing is that when I'm in church, and that's not just when I'm cleaning, but when I'm there during services, that my focus needs to be on him and on what he has and the message that he has. So during the worship, it's about him. During the preaching, it's about him. During the praying, it's about him. It's not about whether or not they play my favorite song, whether they're playing this song again, whether the pastors preach that message before, whether the same person prays the same prayer beside me every single time. It's about your walk with him. It's about what he is saying to you. Are you hearing what the shepherd is saying? Or are you so focused on everyone else around you that you're just not getting it? The second thing I felt him speaking to my heart about was when people come into the church, And he said, this is part of the problem in my church, is that we're so focused on everyone else that we're not focusing on him. So we're worried about what this person's wearing and what that person's wearing, that we're not focusing on the presence of God being there. And so sometimes it's important for us to just know that our pew is a lot dirtier than other people's. We just don't always see that dirt. The same way that I've seen a couple of my little kids' shoe prints on the pews, but as I'm cleaning, it's sucking up more dirt than what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing it go through the clear part of the hose. It's the same with us, is that, we're like, oh, well, I'm not perfect. I've got this and this. But inside, we're so dirty. We're so filthy because we haven't paid attention to what's on our pew and what's in our area. We're so focused on that little spot over there. That's something that somebody's done worn 4 times, or that shirt that cuts too low, or them pants that sag just a little bit, or the fact that they're wearing sneakers instead of dress shoes, or this matches and that doesn't. We need to be focusing on what the Lord has for us. And then this morning, as I'm sitting here and I was reading, I felt like God was dealing with me on remembering the Sabbath and keeping it holy. So not just are we supposed to be setting one day aside for God, but if we're taking that day and we're only going to church, we're not really getting into the word. We're not really getting into the praying. We're not really getting into the praising. All of that is meant for him. It doesn't matter whether or not we've heard the same songs for the last 5 years. And it doesn't matter if we've heard the last sermon 2 or 3 times. It doesn't matter if this person prays the same exact prayer every single time. What matters is, are you listening to the voice of the shepherd? Are you recognizing what God is saying? Are you listening to your master? Are you listening to your Father? Or are you paying attention? Are you keeping that day holy? Or are you having inner dialogues about what this person is doing, what that person's wearing, and how that person sounds? And so when reading this morning in my Bible, in Matthew chapter 7, verse 2 tells us that whatever measure that we judge out, it will be measured back to us. And then verse 3 says to stop examining the speck in your brother's eye and start examining the plank in ours. So I prayed last night and I had asked God to forgive me for kind of throwing a fit in my head because things weren't going my way. And I went and I apologized to my husband too, because even though I didn't verbally say anything, for one, I know my face speaks. And for two, the not saying things sometimes, silence can be loud. It can be very deafening. And so we have to remember to humble ourselves so that we can be used by God. Humble ourselves so that we can hear when he's speaking to us. Y'all have a great day.